Well, we'll do it again. And this time I'll give it audio. And with that cough, we start the show. How's it going, everybody? Hey, no problem. I've been clearing my throat all evening, so we're maybe we're both getting a little bit of the spring fever or something here. For those of you who are hopefully watching here, I am Steve Sande, and this is Marty Edwards next to me. Hi, Marty Edwards next to me.
Hey.
And let's see, I got to make sure that's muted there. Let's see, there we are. Okay, well, I just had to make sure we were actually visible, but you are correct. We are visible.
Yeah, I usually hit the mute button when I have to cough, but I did not then. And so,
well, sometimes they just slip out.
Yeah.
I'm really bad about coughing, though. I've always had I think it was when I was a child, I had a tonsillectomy and ended up hemorrhaging in my throat. Almost died, which was bad. And they cauterized everything to kind of stop that. And ever since then, I've always had a lot of coughing and all that good stuff. So there another piece of Steve Sande history.
History's coming together.
Or trivia. Well, Dennis, as you can see, Dennis is not with us tonight. Dennis is just back from his vacation, and we have to congratulate him. His daughter-in-law is graduating from grad school tonight. So congratulations to his daughter-in-law, and congratulations to Dennis. And but it sounds like he had a good trip.
He did. He said it was really good. So he got away for a while, and I don't think he posted anything. A much-needed break.
Well, I understand you took a little trip over the weekend, too.
Yeah, I went to a wedding. It was only about 70 miles away, but just a little overnight trip wedding. Went to and stayed in it's actually right on the Ohio River, Kentucky, looking into Indiana. And it was like plantation era, Civil War era home. And they had rented for us to all stay in. So,
oh, cool.
Very interesting. So even had Wi-Fi. So.
That's what helps.
Yeah.
Definitely got to have Wi-Fi. Well, I tell you, sometimes the rented places or just we used to, when my wife and I first started traveling back in like 1980, at that time we did it because in a lot of cases it was less expensive. We went to a lot of bed and breakfasts in England. And, of course, back in those days, you had no way of making reservations. So you just drove into some place and you had this, I can't remember the name of the guide, but it was a bed and breakfast guide that you could get. And every year they published a new one. And, we went to the bookstore, got the latest copy of it, and you'd look through it. Oh, let's see, this place, looks interesting. You try to ring them and see if you could get in. Nowadays, we'd probably make reservations like 18 months in advance to do that.
Everything's online now. So
yeah, it in a way it kind of takes a lot of the spontaneity out of things, because I think some of the more memorable places that we stayed were some of the oddball places that maybe we didn't really want to stay there, but we had to because everything else was full.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Everything's so planned and so electronic now. And even this, they just said, come, we've got your room. So we just walk in, stayed where they pointed. And that was pretty much it.
Here's your room.
Yeah. It was almost stepping back to college days because it was you had shared restrooms down the hall. I felt like I was in a dormitory, and so that was a little different. And flashback, I sort of say to my college days, but I can't say me. When I was in college, my dormitory, every room had its own restroom. We were built like a Motel
What?
6. Yeah, every room.
Oh,
We didn't share.
man. And for some reason, I always seemed to be, when I was in college living in the dorms, which I did for 4 years for some stupid reason I was saving my money. I guess that's a good way of doing it. But the restroom was always as far away as possible. So
Yeah. I'm a very consistent person. I don't care much for change. I was in the same room all 4 years, and I think even in the same bed. I never changed rooms for 4 years in college. So
wow.
a lot of consistency.
The last, I'm trying to remember if it was 2 years or 2.5 years, I was in the same room. And the cool thing about it was, no, I guess it was, it would have been 1.5 years. But I had a single room with a balcony that was up on the University of Colorado campus. If anybody, who's a CU grad is watching this, that was in Kittredge over in, back in the days when they had 2 female halls and 2 male halls. And then they started mixing them by floor, and things are definitely different now. But yeah, that was interesting. Those were the days.
We didn't even have, of course, there was no computers in college. I think we had one digital system for registration, and it used punch cards. I specifically remember.
Yeah, I could bore people with the punch cards, carrying the box of cards for doing structural analysis homework. Glad we're, things have changed a heck of a lot for us. Well, I was gonna kind of change direction tonight a little bit, because I think a lot of people think that we're really big Apple fanboys. And we are for the most part, but there are certain little things that have always just bothered me about Apple. And recently there have been some, I guess you could say, almost trends that have just been not infuriating, but annoying. They just kind of, they dig at me, and I just kind of go, come on, Apple. So I thought we'd kind of talk about that for a while tonight, just to see what we can say out here. I'm going to let you go first if you have.
Yeah, well, it's a little hard to say because I'm so new to the Apple world. I haven't really had time to develop dislikes yet, but I've been using Apple products for quite a few years. But I did come from the world of Android, and previous to that, BlackBerry. And before that, Windows Mobile, etc., all the way back to, whatever basic, cell phones and basic computers, first computer in 82. But I guess if it's one thing that I do dislike, it's almost of somewhat of a paradox. Apple came out with the commercial in 1984 about the girl, the hammer breaking free of, the bonds of the PC and everything and being different. But in a way, Apple has almost become the person that's locked us in because, with your iPhone, you have very little choice as to any customization. Even like the locking sound was changed from some kind of tone to another tone, and you have no choice on that. You have to accept it. So I almost feel like it's a little bit of a paradox that they had the commercial in 84, and the one I'm talking about, 1984 commercial, breaking free. But I almost feel like Apple has become the guy on the screen at times. You will have this lock sound, and there's no choice. You will have a grid of icons. You cannot, have this. We can change our wallpaper, move the icons, but I feel like we're really constrained. I guess if that's the one thing I dislike about Apple so much, you will do it this way. And, but then again, I can see that it's easy to troubleshoot. It's very consistent. I think it makes software run smoother, but I think being so tied down It's probably one of the things I would say I dislike.
Yeah, and that's one reason, the jailbreak committee or community, really
Yeah.
jailbreak committee. Uh, my tongue is not working today, but anyway, the jailbreak community, really, I think came out of that. You had so many people who were saying, "Oh, come on, let me change this, or let me do that, or I'd like to do this, but Apple has some regulation in the App Store rules that forbids me from doing it." And so you started seeing the jailbreakers really, going hard and strong there. Uh, it's been kind of difficult for them lately. A lot of jailbreaks have been almost stopped by
Yeah.
Apple.
Well, you're right, and of course, I've never tried to jailbreak one. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. The instructions are online, but you really do open up and lose a lot of security. I guess the tightness does give us the security, but there's just so many things. Like even I'm looking now over at my phone, the photo app. They added a folder for people and an album. I don't want that folder. Not
Yeah.
that not that I don't want to see friends and family's faces, but it picks up faces from if I've taken a screenshot of a video game on the phone, it puts those characters in there. I would
Yeah.
love to get rid of that folder, but I cannot. Apple in their 1984 screen up there saying you will have this folder. And
You will
so,
have it and you will
yeah.
like it.
And I wish I had a little bit more options there. So, I don't want to appear too harsh, but they really are almost 1984ish in how the phone is laid out. I feel like they're really hand holding us. And so anyone who hears
Yeah.
this can say, well, he's not really a fanboy. I do really like Apple products, but there are some quirks I would really, I could change.
Yeah. And well, you know me, like I said, I'm a total fanboy, but I've got two major complaints right now about Apple. And I'd say probably the first one has got to be that they take too long to come out with new products. And I think about the project for the original iPod. They basically got the idea, basically okayed it, ran it past Steve Jobs, and it was on market in a year. Now, granted, that thing isn't as sophisticated as some of the devices we have now. There was nothing in it that was really, I guess you could say, custom silicon. It was, in a lot of cases, they were, just taking the bits and pieces, throwing them together, and came up with a really fantastic product that really, I think, saved Apple and really started pushing it towards the company we see now. And like I said, they did that in about a year. Now you'll hear rumors of something for years, and then finally it'll show up, or a lot of times it seems like it's things will show up after everybody else has kind of already reacted to the rumors and they've already come out with the products. So, I know there's a lot of, I don't know what the word for is, it's kind of history that they want things to be perfect. That
Right.
culture, we're not going to ship it until it's absolutely perfect. We're going to spend, 5 weeks to get this pixel just right.
Exactly.
And, that's a little ridiculous. I know it does make the devices nicer looking, I'd say. Things tend to work a lot better, but I almost wonder if I could blame Johnny Ive for that. He seems to be the man who, wants things a certain way. It has to look a certain way, and well, Steve Jobs had it right with his comment he made back in 1983 when the Mac was just on the verge of coming out. He said, "Real artists ship; they get stuff out the door." And
So you feel like they've gone to form over function a lot of times.
well, not necessarily that, but I think there's we can't fail culture. We can't have a product that's going to be less than awesome.
Right.
Everything has to be perfect. And by doing that, they're just slowing down the process. We keep hearing comments about that iPhone 8 or iPhone X or iPhone edition or the anniversary iPhone, whatever it's going to be called. That they want that Touch ID button embedded in the screen. So you don't. Maybe you just put your thumb on one portion of the screen, and things go. It understands you're logging in, and now we're hearing, well, they may have to delay that, or they'll have very few of these devices because the yields aren't good, things like that. Maybe they shouldn't try to push it out this year. Maybe they should just come out with an iPhone 7 and iPhone 7S with some nice new features. And if it takes until January or February of next year to get a really good, solid product, do it then. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
I
that
agree. Yeah.
pushes you into 2018, but do it.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think in a way they've painted themselves into a corner. They feel like they've got to do yearly upgrades because all the blogs expect it.
Yeah,
And it's just, and they say, well, I read a lot of blogs say the iPhone is boring because it's the same form. You're not going to do a lot of change with a rectangular slab of glass. you
yeah,
know, there's only so much you can do with it. I think it's going to be under the hood with chips and software.
yeah.
So
So it'll
yeah,
be
that's
faster.
a good thing that you dislike the long product, intros.
Well, and the other thing is kind of the same path, but um, they take too long to admit they've made mistakes. When they do make a mistake, like with the Mac Pro or the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, where most professionals were going, "Wait a second, I can't do anything in terms of taking this device and actually adding something to it," because, like in the case of the Mac Pro, you couldn't put a new graphics card in because it couldn't handle the heat. With the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, oh, well, let's see, I think we can only put in 16 gigabytes of RAM, or I guess you can get 32, can't you?
I may
Make
be
build to
mistaken,
order
but I think it's maxed out. I don't think you
at
can do
16.
32.
But yeah, in a situation like that, I was glad to see that this year they actually did admit they've made some mistakes, but it took way too long for them to actually come out and say, we kind of screwed up.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think in a way they've become more of a social and spin doctor approach instead of just really cranking it out. And I guess sometimes, and I'll let, of course, you finish your thought, but I think almost their products are like sometimes the emperor's new clothes. When they come out with the MacBook Pro with the touch bar, I almost felt like it was the emperor's new
Yeah.
clothes. People saying wonderful, and some people find that what's new here? There's not much. I know some
Yeah.
people will disagree, but I'd rather go. I'm one for function over form. Just I want something really good quality. Just it doesn't have to be beautiful. And I mean, products look nice. I want them to. Don't misunderstand. But I feel like they're pushing out just to meet deadlines and well, probably really to keep some shareholders happy.
Yeah. And you are right. It is 16 gigabytes max, which that's insane.
Well, we bought my wife
Gigabytes. I'm sorry.
just in October. I mean, in March. We're both saying wrong things here. It was the day after her birthday. Her birthday's March 17th. The next day, we went and got her, and I'll point at the box here. That box next to the flowers is a MacBook Pro box, but it's last year's model. 16 gig of RAM, i7, no touch bar, logo on the back lights up, and I absolutely love it. It's the most powerful computer in the house. But it seems a little level that they introduced basically the same thing except with a touch bar and really not that
Yeah.
much difference. And I can see how a person could push 16 some night. When we broadcast, I'm going to give a demo on using Windows or VMware Fusion. When you run 3 or 4 virtual machines or 5 or 6, you need that 32
Yeah.
gig of RAM.
Well, and I tell you, there are times I don't have that problem as much with our new broadcasting system here, Zoom, and basically just getting it out of Zoom. But when I was using Wirecast and had to have some other things out there to kind of get the broadcast out and get things working, guess what would happen?
Yeah.
You feel the entire machine just slowing down. So one of the reasons I really love this. Now, I'm sorry, I just had a screen pop up that disappeared there. Anyway, I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like it's a pro machine. Let people put something in it. Put a little door on the bottom where people can slide in their own RAM. I miss that. I really do. It was good.
Well, I grew up in computers, or when I finally started getting computers and didn't know much about them, but then it didn't take long till I started customizing, putting things in, building my own systems and everything. And I guess that's the one thing I do miss about in the Apple world. So I guess that would apply to the phones and iPads. I'm obviously not going to update those with hardware, but I like a little bit of changes and tweaking and experimenting with software. And I'd love that on the Macs. I would love to be able to put in a more memory graphics card and play around a little bit, because I absolutely love the Mac operating system. And, it's just, so I guess that was my big complaint, is the lack of customization, hardware when it's applicable, and software across the board. But I see the other side to it. It really protects us, but I like a little bit more openness.
Absolutely. And, it's just, one other thing I got to admit just kind of drives me up a wall about Apple. And I noticed Paul Gans is out there, and he'll agree with me. It's like Apple has to do everything that's politically correct.
I agree with that.
And, in some cases, I have to, like their renewable energy thing, I think it's great, because honestly, it's a really good way down the road to, increase profits, if you want to put it that way. You're not paying somebody else for that energy, you're generating it yourself. But I'm not going to bring up the social things, but it's like, they've got to be these little social justice warriors, and they've got all these little agendas that, they keep having to push. And, for some of us, for me, I would just like them to be a consumer electronics company and a software company, and not get into that junk, or not push it as much as they do.
I agree. I'm not, politically minded and activist on anything, but I don't think it's necessarily, I guess Apple feels like they need to take a leadership role, but do what you do best. Don't spread yourself too thin. And another thing I'll mention that you made me think of that does bother me a little bit about Apple is I feel like they leave sometimes things half done. And I feel Siri is a prime example. I suppose it is my Southern accent, but Siri cannot understand me so much. My wife's name's Ruby, and I talk to her and it calls her Tubby instead. Things like that can get you in trouble. So
I still love that.
It was actually T-U-B-Y, but it was too much like Tubby. And, it's just, but I really wish they would just, maybe the car is okay, or the software in the car. But if they ask me, and they're not going to, they don't belong in the business of producing TV shows, movies. They said maybe 10 to 11 new shows a year. Drop that and make Siri near perfect and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if I was on the board, that's what I would say. And that's why I'm not on the board, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that, and you're not an ex-vice president,
Yeah.
But I had to, one of the things that just got me kind of laughing on this entire, topic of the, they always have to go down this path. They have to have, it has to be this way. We're going to, well, I don't know, like I said, it drives me nuts that they have to do that. It's one of those things where they can get their word out there. They can do that type of thing. And yeah, they need to be a good corporate citizen and all that, but just don't lay it on so heavy. That's
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a middle line. I think they cross the line sometimes with their activism and stuff. And it's just be the best hardware and software company you can be.
Yeah. Hey, you brought up a good point in terms of the or the TV shows that they want to do, creating their own content. I looked at what they were talking about putting out there, and except for Carpool Karaoke and what was the other one? I can't think of it. It's Planet of the Apps, both of which, really kind of sound fun and interesting. The rest of them were all a bunch of, documentaries and shows relating to rap and hip hop. And not everybody likes rap and hip hop. And I think they should, I think even if you take a look at the listings in the in Apple Music Store, that's not their primary. I mean, yeah, there are people who like rap and hip hop, but there are a lot of people who like other music. Right. So, spread it out a little bit.
Yeah, I just, I feel like they're beginning to go down a wrong path. They're going to spread their resources thin. I mean, they've got enough resources to spread, but it's going to pull. You've only got so many engineers and so many hours in a day. And I feel like their other avenues and aspects will suffer, but because of this. But, I'm no expert, but I could not believe they spent $3 billion to buy Beats. That seemed like something they're not ever going to get a return on. Maybe they already have. But who am I to say? And I'm not, Just.
The only way I could see that possibly really panning out for them is, Beats does have the design, whatever you want to call it, savvy for making speakers. And if you take one of their speakers, build in the Siri capability, and maybe add in the what's it called, the W1 chip, so everything can stream to this thing absolutely speedily, and hook up to it immediately. And that comes out next month as the Amazon Echo competition. Then I think you've got one heck of a deal there.
Yeah.
Because
I agree if they integrated something like that. I guess the bottom line is don't deviate and veer off to what I would consider non-tech companies, all the TV shows or non-tech ventures, Yeah. But, I guess they want to diversify, but sometimes it doesn't seem very logical. So that would be one of my main things.
If they really want to do that, and we've brought this up before, I think it was you who brought it up, that they ought to buy Sony. And
well, I believe it. I will give credit to whom credit is due. I think it was Dennis.
Oh, okay. But still, if they want to get into content, Sony does. They've had their whatever you want to call it, Sony Music. They've had they've made movies. They have TV shows that they produce. Buy them, or at least buy that portion of the company. Maybe Sony hardware, stays the same out there, but they've always had a good relationship. Maybe not even a merger, just cooperate a lot.
Right. Well, that is a good idea. And you brought up something I want to make sure we mention on our broadcast tonight. Rumors are flying fast that there's going to be a standalone Siri appliance for our home, maybe introduced next month.
Oh, I hope so.
I was going to ask, but you just answered the question. Do you think you would purchase that?
Yeah, I would. And, the funny thing is, I think I've mentioned it before. I have an Amazon Echo. I also have a third-party speaker that I'm trying to see if I can find the darn thing. It's somewhere on my desk. But both of these products, they work pretty darn good. And I got to admit, Alexa is well done, really, really well done. Occasionally I'll run into, an issue. where, you know, it really doesn't understand what I'm asking. But I get that all the time with Siri too. You know, if you
I
happen to
thought you was going to say
phrase,
with Barb.
yeah. Uh, but anyway, you know what
Yeah.
yeah,
That's where I thought you were going there for a minute, more in the home.
yeah,
But
yeah.
well, you're right. You know, voice technology is not where it's going to end up. It's going to get a lot better. But I personally, I've thought about doing a video. I do have an Android phone, and with no, I don't have a cell account associated with it. But I thought about doing a side by side, press them at the same time, Google Voice and Siri, and speak to them and see which one just gets my voice better, because I do have somewhat of a challenging accent, I know. Overall, I have found Google to get my voice quite a bit better than Siri, but I'm hoping that'll change.
Google also tends to understand, you know, like phrases in different languages for the names of restaurants that will be. I always bring up the local Mexican restaurant that, you know, if we keep eating there, I'm going to be 5,000 pounds because this place is so damn good. But it's called Los Dos Patrios, the two, you know, ponies, you know, basically is the name of the place. They've got 3 restaurants around here. They're great restaurants. But I asked one day as an experiment, and I went in and I asked Siri, give me directions to Los Dos Patrios. And it could not understand what Los Dos Patrios was. You know, it just kept coming up and going, what? I can't find any last das, you know, it
Yeah.
was getting weird. Asked the same thing from the Amazon Echo device, Echo Dot, and it got confused as well. I brought up Google Now, or not Google Now, but Google, the voice, you know, thing that you can use.
Right.
Asked the question, it knew exactly what I was talking about and had directions. So,
Yeah, I have found Google across the board far more accurate and also catching my accent. And sometimes Siri doesn't make sense. At the wedding I was at this weekend, a lady, uh, she wanted to know basically how to get home, the best way to take. And she has an iPhone 6 Plus, I think. I said, well, use Siri. Just tell it to just press the button, say navigate home. Simple enough. She did that. It came up with her correct home address. It printed out on the screen. And then it said, I don't know anything about you. Will you enter your home address? It had it up on top, but would never do it for her. I don't understand that. And so I finally
that's
just,
weird.
yeah, because it actually, when she said navigate home, it knew her address, typed it out, navigate, and it gave it. And then I don't know anything about you. Please enter your information. And so she's not very
Whoa.
technical. So that was very confusing. So you know what she did? Just gave up, not use Siri. And so, you know, things like that hurt. And
Mm.
that's why I'm saying work on that instead of making a documentary about the history of music or something, you know.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah. And
fix what you've got out there and make it good.
yeah. And I mean, in a situation like that, what it should have done is not suddenly made them, you know, look at the screen and maybe type in something or do anything like that. It should have been Siri saying, I'm not sure I really understand where your house is. Could you just speak your address
Yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like that?
I think it was thrown. I don't know how it got her home address, but it had it, but because it was thinking she wasn't in the phone, but it had her home. So it was very confusing for a non-technical user. I'll be honest, I consider myself very high tech, and I don't know why I was doing it. I got the maps pulled up, dropped a pin or something on her home address, and got her going. But you know, you're not always going to have someone around to do it.
I was going to say, though, have you called her and found out if she really made it home?
I saw her the next day. She made it.
Oh, good.
But you know, I guess that if I was going to put it in a nutshell, and I think a lot of the viewers would agree with me. Fix what you've got, make it really top notch, then consider diversifying, but don't leave it half baked and undone.
Yeah. You know, and one other thing, now, you know, the old Apple, and I'm talking about, you know, from about after Steve Jobs left until about the time he came back, that Apple, they did a lot of things wrong, and they almost went out of business as a result. But one thing I remember about that Apple was that they were willing to bring people in for, I don't know what you want to call them, kind of like focus groups on new products. Now, I know the company is just secretive as heck nowadays, and I would absolutely bet that they do not do focus groups because they don't want somebody to go, oh, guess what I got to play with last week?
Right,
I got to play with the new. Yeah, of course, but this could be something where you could just have people, you go into a room, you hand over your phone and every other device. I can think of, there were like 3 or 4 times back in the day where I got to go to these Apple focus groups. They were in Denver. They had an office back here. Yeah, like Paul Gans just said, yeah, Apple stock was $6 a share during that time. But the focus groups were interesting because they came up with it was before they came out with their first scanner. And at the time, scanners were horrible, god-awful devices to use. They were horrible. So they came out with an Apple scanner. And we went in and, saw this thing before it ever made it to market. And I remember the first thing I said, about it was a black and white scanner. And I said, wait a second. We have a color scanner in our office. You've got to make a color scanner. This is a step backwards. Well, we think most people will want it. Everybody else in the room agreed. It was like, it's got to be a color scanner. We don't care if the price is 3 times as much. Just make a color scanner, with the same controls and that type of thing. And if I remember correctly, they did first come out with the monochrome one, which was panned in the market. And then they came out with a quite expensive color version later on. And they, of course, got rid of that back in the Steve Jobs return days, where he basically said, we're not in the scanner business. We're not in the printer business. We're not in any of these businesses.
Well, they did trim the fat then. And I feel like that's what they need to do today. Trim the fat before the fat gets there. I'm like you. There's very few. I might enjoy that show, Planet of the Apps, but that's probably it for me. So anyway, I feel a little bad talking about things we dislike about Apple, but I'm not such a fanboy that I'm not going to call it as I see it. So
I think it is, though, kind of a good thing to criticize the companies that you like when you find not everything is perfect about the company.
No. Well, I feel like Winston Churchill, the worst government in the world is a democracy, except all the others.
Yeah.
I feel like the worst tech company in the world is Apple, except all the others.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I always have to remind myself whenever I'm making fun of Samsung, like especially last year with the Galaxy Note 7, that could have easily happened to Apple.
It could have. I do think Apple has more quality control, and not to bash Samsung. That was one of my first smartphones, and I loved it. And but they're having more trouble put out today. They said, I just saw on one of the Android sites I read regularly that a lot of their phones are beginning to just reboot on their own, of the new ones, the Galaxy 8.
Ooh.
And so there's some issues going on there. But
not good.
No, and. I do, but I'll give the other side of the argument. I like the fact that you can't change the Apple things very well when a friend or family member or customer calls saying, I'm having a problem, pardon me, having a problem with my iPhone. I know exactly where their menus are, tell them what to press. They've done no customization, so I can really walk them through it verbally and not have to see. So that's a real plus.
Okay, this is totally off the topic, but you just brought up a point there. I did a write-up last week that was actually pretty popular for another website, and that's OWC's website, the blog.macsales.com. And it was about doing remote control of Macs. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And in fact, I'm going to write a second post this week because it was so popular and so many people came up with other ideas that I figured I got to do part 2. And one of these days, I'm going to bring it over and write it for AWT. Anyway, one thing I think they really need to do is figure out a way of letting people do remote control of iPads and iPhones. Because once again, in terms of being able to do remote support, it would help so much to be able to grab a phone, maybe just put in somebody else's Apple ID and be able to control their phone and say, here's what, maybe they have to accept it on their end, but be able to go in and say, okay, I'm going to show you, I'm going to walk you through this. I'm tapping on this, I'm doing this, I'm scrolling down, I'm tapping on that. It'd be fantastic for remote support.
I agree fully. I keep TeamViewer loaded on the Mac because I do enough of support for others. And of course, I can connect to Mac or Windows with that I log onto their computers. But I think the answer to that would be have that client server built in, and it pops up a one-time code that can never be used again. You type it on your phone, connect to them, then it's destroyed. So pretty much just, gets rid of it. But I have often thought how much I wish Mac and iPad or iPhone and iPad had some kind of remote access where I could just control their phone and say, here's what you need to do. And of course, they're going to have to give it to trusted people, but I do it to other people's Macs all the time.
Yeah, agreed. I find I do that way too often. I get so many people who say, hey, could you help me out?
Yeah, so, as long as they're online, it makes it very easy to connect. I think that would put Apple over the top as far as the phone to get. I think they're already there, as far as I'm concerned, but I think that would make it the phone when people realize that if I have trouble, Apple or a trusted tech shop or friend is going to be able to connect, fix my problems, and get me out of the mess or show me what to do.
Yeah. And there's a screen. Well, I just found this out today. Honestly, I did not know this. I used to be an Apple consultant, went through all that stuff. I never knew that there's a share screen app built in to the Mac operating system.
I did discover that. It's basically real VNC built within the Mac.
Yeah. And it's hidden. I think I'll write a post about it. It is hidden. But that's what Apple uses to take control of your machine. You basically do it by Apple ID. And, so you get the other person's Apple ID, you type it in, they say, okay, go ahead and control my machine, and boom, you're there. Build that same capability into the iPhone and iPad. Man, you've got wonderful support tool there for Apple and for people who are just trying to help out a friend or relative.
And probably will even be easier to help than it would on the Mac, because if the internet's down, they can't connect to your Mac, but chances are the cell system's not going to be down so they can connect.
Yeah.
Like that. But you're right. I'm not very new I haven't been to Macs very long, only since 2015 for the actual Mac. But I discovered it early because I depend upon VNC, so I Googled how to remote control my Mac, and I found out it was built in. And so, stumbled across that.
I'd been using all these third-party tools. I did not know that until today.
Well, I have found, I tend to use both a little bit. I actually have real VNC on the Mac because I find it a little bit thinner on resources than the built-in one. Seemed like it was. And so I use real VNC as well as their built-in to do various things. So
my favorite is one application that I just absolutely love. If you want to control a Mac from an iPhone or iPad, the best solution out there is Parallels Access. And of course, it's a subscription. You do have to pay for it. But I tell you, I demonstrate that every time I do my iOS class over at the local community college, that's one of the things I do. And we're on a really slow Wi-Fi network there. And yet I can get through in a, usually no time at all, log on to this iMac here, and then show people, hi, I'm controlling my computer at home. So I love Parallels Access. I give it a, double thumbs up. There we are.
Right. I use remote access a lot within the house. I have access to my wife's Mac as well as mine. One of the things about hers, the VNC client for the iPhone or iPad has Bonjour built into it. So I didn't have to do anything. I fired it up. My wife's Mac showed up and I could just log on to it with a password. So, but if you're interested, before we close, I see we're getting at near 50 minutes. I have a quick game demo that some might be interested in.
Ooh, I would love to see this.
And
Let's go for it.
All right. I probably one of my favorite games. It's a little old. Let me get my phone sharing here. And I share me. All right. It comes up as a default. One of my favorite games, and you can still buy it. It's a little old. I guess you're seeing my phone. Are you seeing everything? Oh, I hadn't hit screen share. Yeah, I'm glad I asked here. I could have had it up, then hit share. Yeah, I'm running a little behind here on things. Okay. There we go. Okay. So one of my favorite games, you may be very familiar and others are too, but it's a little old, so people may not load it anymore, but Monument Valley.
Oh, love that game.
So you have played it then.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll give just a quick demo for those who have not. It's in the App Store, probably about $5. It's basically you solve a set of three-dimensional puzzles, walk this girl through various things, and really impossible physics within the game. It's got 10 levels to begin with. Of course, I've played through every possible game and that they have. And I was going to show a quick demo of, I'll do level 2 because it's quick and gives a good example of what makes the game so good. It has impossible physics that you do. So I need to walk this little girl basically up to the top. You see a sort of a 8-sided figure. I need to get her up there. And so to do it, I've got to get her. There's things to click on to open up paths and the such like. So I need to get her down to the bottom. So I turn and it makes nice guitar strumming as you turn. I like the controls in this game. You don't have to drag to move her. You just tap where you want her to go. And I want her to go down there, so I'll tap on it. And she'll start walking. As soon as she touches that pad on the bottom, okay, we have some more structures come up. So I need to get her over that other pad. Well, of course, I've played it a lot, so I know to do that, I need to get her back over here. Whoops. And of course, she's not going to walk up there. I need to walk her back to the starting point. Then I'll move the centerpiece. If you'll notice, the little controls disappear. I can't move that while she's on it. And then so I'll turn it and get her over here. So just a quick demo of this one level. All right. So, okay, that raised that. But now how on earth am I going to get her up there? That's where the impossible physics come in. Yeah. Escher had painted all these things that look like impossible, staircases and the such like. What was it, William Escher? Trying to think. And so you just have to experiment, see if it'll work. She's way below that level. When I rotate it, if you'll look, it connects down lower. It looks like it's an impossible connect at first, and it is. But when you rotate, it defies physics. And then I can just simply walk her up to the top, and that will solve this level. Of course, as the game progresses, it gets much more advanced. And so that's it. And so I've completed that level. She takes off her hat, and you've completed the level then. But that is one of my all-time favorite games. I've completed it, but I keep it on the phone because I just like to revisit it every once in a while. So I thought some of our viewers, if you're looking for something to play, it's still available, of course, in the App Store. It's there's no in-app purchases. You just pay a flat-out $5. It's the best $5 you'll ever spend. And I'll have to double-check. It may be like last week. It may be a lot higher now, but I doubt it. But something that gives me hope that that game might come out with more is I saw a picture of Tim Cook in England, and he had stopped by their offices where they developed this game just within the last few months. And he was there with some of the in-game characters that they had, and so it made me wonder if he likes it so well. And he's talked to them about continuing on. It was interesting. He was at their studio. But
That
anyway,
is
that's my
interesting.
app of the week.
I absolutely have to agree with you on that because, I mean, Monument was one of my absolute favorite, or still is one of my favorite games. It's one I won't remove, and it's a mind bender. Really, if you want something that's just going to get you totally engrossed for a long time, perfect game. It's really good.
It is. It is really a genuinely good game. It gets a little challenging toward the end, but it's very doable. And I'm like you, for whatever reason, I don't take it off my phone. I like to keep it on there and just revisit a level every once in a while. And so that was I think it was the game of 2014, but they've updated it to, where that it's 64-bit and you can still, it'll load on current phone software.
Double thumbs up there. And believe it or not, while I'm looking, doing work here, doing this show, I'm also looking for a new light panel because I've got two really bright lights up here, and yet everything's dark. And I don't know why that is.
Well, I think we can go with new theme to the show, the light side and, the other.
The dark side.
Yeah. I prefer to be the light side.
Yeah, so do I. So that's why I'm looking at these lights.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing. Well, I'm not sure we had, once again, all that many people who were watching. I think it was you, me, and Paul Gans. But the one good thing is we do get a lot of people who are watching the show after the fact, going out to YouTube and watching. So that's a good thing. One other thing that I'm going to kind of bring up here, and we did send out an email to Team AWT members today. Those are folks who kind of support the website through their tax dollars. No, through money. They, I was sounding like NPR there. Anyway, they basically what we told them is that anybody who is a Team AWT member can join us on this show. And what I mean by that is, instead of just having two windows here, or when Dennis is here, there'd be three of us in a box. We want to invite the Team AWT members to join in. Now, we can't have everybody talking all the time, so what we'll be doing is muting those folks until there's a little thing that says, I think it's on there anyway, but we can mute people. The other thing we want to be able to do is basically have them raise their hand when they want to talk to us. But I think that'll be a fun way to get some questions and comments. For instance, in our discussion of Monument Valley there, we could have had somebody come up and say, I hate that game for some reason. Then you and I could have both just beat up on them. Boom, boom, boom.
Well, yeah. I'd almost use that game as if someone wanted to be hired as an engineer or a computer tech person. Finish this game. If you can finish it, you're hired. It is pretty challenging. It makes you think.
Oh, there are some levels that I spent hours on, and then it was just like one little thing I did different, and boom, you're in.
It's one my wife really enjoyed. She played it to its completion as well, and we both have really enjoyed that game. So
good
go
stuff.
out and buy it. It's still available. It's money well spent.
Definitely. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will be back next Monday night, 6:30 Pacific time, 9:30 Eastern time, for episode 7. Ooh, lucky 7.
Yep.
And hopefully, for some reason, I just have this funny feeling that maybe we'll hear about an iPad announcement.
May do it. And we didn't mention they did put out another beta for basically all the OSs today.
Yeah.
If people that want to do that. So hoping we'll see the final version of that maybe next Monday. Who knows?
Could be. Oh, and tomorrow, by the way, completely forgot about that. Guess what else we have coming up? The second quarter results.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Ooh. So it's going to be good stuff, I hope. I think I own a couple of shares of Apple in one of my investments, I think.
If you'd bought it like our guest there, Paul, had said, it's $6 a share, about 100 or 200 shares, you might not even be fooling with Apple World today.
Yeah, well, and with the number of stock splits they've had since then, that 6 shares would probably, I keep thinking they did a 7 for 1 stock split, and I think they did at least two for 1 stock splits. So 6, 12, 24, 24 times 7. What is that? My brain's not working.
It's
I've
a
got
lot.
a calculator right here. My brain's, I mean, normally I'm pretty good at doing that. 24 times 7 equals 168. So that 6 shares would be 168 shares they were at 146 and a half or something like that today. That'd be like $24,612.
Of course, yeah, a $36 investment.
Yeah.
So that'd been a good investment. But hindsight's 2020.
Yep. Yeah. I wish I'd known what I know now about investing, but back when I should have been investing, because like you said, I wouldn't be here now.
No.
I probably still would. You got to have fun somehow.
That's right.
Oh, let's see. Paul says if he had saved his Apple stock, it would now be worth $365,000. So I bet he's not happy with that. Paul Gann saying that. Well, anyway, that's it. We'll be back next week. Everybody have a good one. We're going to, of course, we have to run the outro. So bye, everybody, and we'll see you next week. If I can find the video. Help me.
It's always a little different each week.
Every week it's something new and different. But, it wouldn't be quite as fun if we didn't have these fun little tech things. And what's funny? You get a show like British Tech Network Mac Show and a lot of their other shows. They have problems every week too. So I don't feel bad. Anyway, bye everybody. We'll see you
next
later.
week.